Only a couple of weeks ago, I made a video on a 6K monitor by a company called Koikon, and I was impressed by the monitor. I thought it was good, but the only problem with that monitor is, of course, it's from a brand, it's from a manufacturer that doesn't have the sort of reputation and the experience that other brands do, that other manufacturers do. Because the reason you buy from major manufacturers that you've heard of is because you get good customer service, and you get, if you have any issues like warranty issues, they usually sort it out. That's what they build their brand on, and that's why those brands in the first place last. Finally, we have an actual proper competitor to the Pro Display XDR for a reasonable price. ASUS here are sponsoring this video. They sent me out this monitor. They want me to compare it obviously with the Pro Display XDR, share my experience with it, and basically share how absurdly good value this monitor is, because this 6K monitor is going for $1299 compared to Apple's own version, which is $5,000. So if you are interested in a 6K monitor, I think it's worth watching this video. In the box, you do get the stand, unlike the Pro Display XDR, you do get a stand included with the price, and this stand is very good. It gives you all sorts of movement, all sorts of ways to adjust it to make it comfortable for you. You also get a HDMI cable and a Thunderbolt cable, and it's really nice to see the Thunderbolt cable included, because that will make it so much easier to connect it to machines like your MacBook. The design itself though is pretty standard. It follows the same style as most of their other Pro Art monitors. It's not meant to be super fancy or super flashy or anything like that. Because it's not made out of aluminium, it actually saves a lot on the cost. I don't think people realize how much it costs to have a sort of aluminium stamping, to have monitors made out of aluminium. It really does add on to the cost. So I can see why ASUS have done it. They just want to make it a lot more affordable. Now, of course, the highlight of this monitor is that 6K resolution at 32 inches, well, 31.5 inches to be exact. Nearly 6 years after the Pro Display XDR, we finally have what is a much more affordable version of a 6K monitor, a 6K display. Now, I do want to make it clear that this isn't necessarily meant to compete directly with the Pro Display XDR. With the price difference between the two, with the features and functionality, there are a few key differences as well. But the main thing they have in common is that 6K resolution. This is an IPS panel at 60 Hz, which is of course the same as the Pro Display XDR, but it doesn't have the individual sort of local dimming zones that it has. It's just a standard LED panel. So don't expect the sort of same HDR performance. You're not going to get the same HDR performance, because this goes up to a brightness of 600 nits compared to 1600 nits on the Pro Display XDR. So if you're looking for a proper HDR monitor, yeah, the Pro Display XDR really is the only option. But if you don't need the HDR functionality, if you're not doing HDR video, HDR photo editing or anything like that, then yeah, this will be completely fine. This is also a matte panel instead of a glass glossy panel. Now, whether you like that or not, I think is really down to personal preference. I've seen in the comments, people say all sorts of stuff. You know, they prefer matte panels, they prefer glossy panels. Everyone is completely different. Everyone has their own personal preferences, but ASUS are exclusively making this with a matte panel. For me, the main reason why I bought the Pro Display XDR 3-4 years ago was for that 6K resolution. I wanted a 6K monitor. It's hard to explain until you start using one yourself how much of a big jump it is going from 4K to 6K. The clarity, the sharpness, the amount of workspace area that you get is significantly above a 4K monitor, a 4K display. Because you could have a 4K image on this monitor wherever, like maybe in Final Cut Pro or something. You can have a full 4K image, but still have your timeline, your editing, your sort of, or any other sort of elements of the UI. You can have it on the screen. So you'll be able to see your video at the full 4K that it is, but then still have all the elements to actually edit the video. I also found it incredibly useful for design work and coding and things like that, photo editing. If you're doing any sort of productivity work, 6K resolution is just an absolute game changer. I can't recommend it enough. Now, of course, all of these panels are 60 Hz. That's the only downside. It would be nice to see ProMotion 120 Hz or whatever, a higher refresh rate, but the limitation is Thunderbolt. You know, Thunderbolt 4 is really the limitation. And of course, no one actually makes that panel yet. Something I also want to clear up is the resolution scaling. So in a few videos that I've mentioned, I've shown the resolution of my Mac and how I sort of set up the display, and people think I've just got it completely wrong. Well, macOS has its own sort of weird way of scaling. So the way it works is that you choose half the resolution of the monitor to get that proper exact sharpness, but it's not like the actual display is coming out at half the resolution. It's just the UI, the text, it makes it more legible. I know on Windows it's better because you can choose the resolution scaling based on a percentage. You can choose 100%, 150%, 200%, and obviously you can choose between that. macOS doesn't really do it like that. macOS does it so that it shows it as a number instead, but you can choose different options to choose the scaling. You are still getting the full resolution. You're not actually feeding the display a lower resolution. So that's a misconception that a lot of people had that I wanted to clear up. A very important feature and one of the main selling points of this monitor is that it's part of ASUS's Pro Art lineup, which is now well regarded for being excellent for color accuracy and any sort of work that you do in and around that. Out of the box, it actually comes with documentation to show that it's being calibrated from the factory, so you don't have to do it yourself. This is something that's very important to me, primarily because of the type of work that I do. I'm doing video editing, photo editing, design work. These three things require very color accurate displays. Now, Apple do obviously an incredible job of making sure their displays are also color accurate out of the box. ASUS are doing the same with their Pro Art lineup. And what I've noticed with this is that it actually has a specific color profile that is perfectly designed to match the display of a MacBook display. So that's another big issue that I found with external monitors that aren't from Apple. Sometimes they don't match the color. You can see some color differences between the MacBook display and the external monitor, but with this, that is not the case. ASUS have done a fantastic job with the color profile on here to match the MacBook displays. So if that's something you're worried about, especially doing any sort of color accurate work, you will not have to worry about it anymore with a monitor like this. To take it a step further, they now have a colorimeter that is specifically designed for their Pro Art displays. So every few months you can use this to make sure your monitor is calibrated. Another key feature is the ability to adjust the brightness of the display through your Mac keyboard. So that's something that's always wound me up about other external displays. You have to go into the settings and adjust the brightness. You can't do it from the keyboard. Well, with this, you can. They have a bit of software and you can see I'm adjusting the brightness on here and it's changing it on this display. With the ASUS Display Widget Center, you can control a lot of the things without actually having to go down into the settings of the monitor itself. So you can control the brightness, the contrast, you can also change the color mode. There's a lot you can do here, and you can see I've selected the M Model P3 mode because that matches the MacBook display the best. This monitor also has Thunderbolt 4 built in, which is a rare feature to see. I barely see any monitors with Thunderbolt built in. That also means you can daisy chain monitors and you can connect things like external hard drives or whatever else through just one cable. So you can see how I have one cable here attached to my MacBook that can charge my MacBook and power the display. It provides up to 96 watts of power, which should be more than enough for most people with MacBooks, unless you're using like a 16-inch MacBook Pro with a Max chip and you have it going at full rate all the time. Then you might need a bit more power, but honestly, I think most people are going to be completely fine with the 96 watts that this delivers. You also get a HDMI port, a display port, and a full KVM, which means if you connect your PC, you can use the same keyboard and mouse across your Mac and your PC. And of course, you can connect a games console if you don't mind playing at 60 Hz, which, to be fair, you know, I think if you're not playing first-person shooters, playing games console on this is going to be completely fine. When it comes to the differences between this and the Pro Display XDR, one of them is of course the design. The Pro Display XDR is made from aluminium, you get that glass panel and everything. That really does add to the cost. The other difference is the brightness. Like I said, this is 600 nits and the Pro Display XDR goes to 1600 nits. That is a big difference, but like I also said, unless you're doing actual HDR sort of content, you're working on HDR stuff, I don't think for most people it's going to make a difference. Pro Display XDR also has obviously the local dimming zones. This doesn't have the local dimming zones, but they are both obviously limited to 60 Hz. So I have a few notes here. The main reason why we haven't seen a 6K monitor at 120 Hz is that without compression, it requires a bandwidth of 72 gigabits per second. Thunderbolt 5 has only just been introduced, and Thunderbolt 5 is the only one that can support that. Thunderbolt 5 obviously very new. There are barely any machines that have it. Only if you have a more recent MacBook Pro with an sort of the M4 Pro chip can you have Thunderbolt 5. Hopefully in the next few years we see higher refresh rate 5K monitors, 6K monitors. It'll be really nice to see them because obviously I feel like for a lot of people that is a big sticking point. For me though, 60 Hz is completely fine, and I genuinely think some people are going to disagree. I think 60 Hz is completely fine for most people. Unless you're gaming, it's not like you need more than 60 Hz to do your work better. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I have a 480 Hz OLED panel that I use for gaming. I can see the difference. Obviously, it's a lot smoother, but Is it going to make me do my design work better? Is it going to make me do my video editing work better? Is it going to make my photo editing faster? No, it's not. It's not going to make any difference really. What I care about more is the color accuracy and that 6K resolution. I am happy to make the compromise on a higher refresh rate panel for the resolution. I prefer having the higher resolution for any productivity work. And I genuinely think for most people, it's going to be exactly the same. A 6K resolution will make you a lot more productive than a high refresh rate monitor. Like that's just how it works. The best part about this monitor though is the pricing. For $12.99, we now get a proper 6K resolution display from an actual proper manufacturer, ASUS, not from some random brand. This is nearly the fifth of the cost of the Pro Display XDR, which in my eyes just makes it absolutely incredible value. If I didn't already have my Pro Display XDR and I had to buy a 6K monitor today and I had to choose between the ASUS monitor and the Apple monitor, I'm choosing this. Like, this is just so much better value and so worth it. I will of course leave a link to this monitor down in the description below. And if you do end up buying it, you also get 3 months of Adobe Creative Suite included for free. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe for more.